Hello everyone, welcome to the Douglas College Institute of Urban Ecology's YouTube channel. My name is Naomi. I am the coordinator for the Institute of Urban Ecology, or you can just call us IUE for short. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some of the ecosystems here around Metro Vancouver, or here in the traditional unceded territories of the Coquitlam, the Kwantlen, the Kakite, Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Tsawwassen, and all Coast Salish peoples. We're gonna briefly, in this video, discuss what an urban ecosystem is, and we're gonna talk about the larger biome that encompasses all these cities in the area, but we're gonna spend most of our time talking about habitat restoration. And I'm going to show you around our soul garden here where I am today at our Coquitlam campus. I'm going to show you some of the easy things that we do that you can also do at home to help regreen, rewild, and restore our urban green spaces. So let's get started. If you haven't already heard, 2021 to 2030 has been declared by the United Nations as the Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. The UN says the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is a rally call for the protection and revival of ecosystems all around the world for the benefit of people and nature. And yes, governments and other higher-ups have a role to play, but collectively, the approximate 2.7 million people living in Metro Vancouver today can also spark big change. First, what is urban ecology? Urban ecology is the study of how living and non-living things interact and influence each other in a city or suburban area. Living things in our cities include things like fungi, plants, and animals, including humans, and non-living things include things like water, air, buildings, roads, and cars. One key goal of urban ecology is to find ways to make cities more sustainable and resilient by integrating ecological principles into urban planning and design. In order to do that, we need to look at the natural geographical area, also referred to as a biome, where our cities are built. For Metro Vancouver, this large biome that encompasses all of the West Coast from Alaska down to California is called the Coastal Temperate Rainforest. From an ecological perspective, we live in this large biome called the Coastal Temperate Rainforest. The rainforest is subsequently made up of many different types of ecosystems, including, but not limited to, old-growth forest, rocky or sandy shorelines, rivers, lakes, and of course our human-made urban ecosystem. And then within each ecosystem, there are many different types of habitats. In the urban ecosystem, our gardens, parks, rooftops, and more all have the potential to be restored or rewilded into a mini coastal temperate rainforest habitat. The easiest way to do that is to just grow the native plants that belong in the coastal temperate rainforest. It makes sense, doesn't it? If we have to cut down trees and plants to build our cities, wouldn't it just seem right to put some back when we're done? Unfortunately, that's not traditionally what happens, and instead we plant things like these exotic plants that look, well, exotic, or European species that settlers were familiar with and liked from home, and lots of monoculture grass. In ecology, if we change the base of a food chain like this, the base of the food chain being the primary producers or the primary food source, aka the plants, all the other species levels are affected in what is referred to as a trophic cascade. You can think of it kind of like a ripple effect or like the butterfly effect. And although these flowers may look pretty to us, Not all plants are created equal when it comes to providing the right food for things like birds and bees. Our native wildlife have co-evolved with our native plant life, and many species have developed something called an obligate symbiotic relationship, meaning those two species are dependent on each other for survival. A great example of this, not locally from the West Coast, but more East Coast, is of course the monarch butterfly and milkweed plants. But here, just the timing at which a flower blooms, for example, is often coordinated with the time at which its specific pollinator also emerges. The nutritional value of pollen also varies from flower to flower. Same with the nectar, and even things like the visual cues that bees use to locate flowers are going to be different when we introduce non native flowers to our ecosystem. And the plants we grow are more than just food for the animals in the coastal temperate rainforest, they're also shelter. And just like food, not all plants are going to provide the appropriate shelter that our wildlife need. Our rainforest, unlike tropical rainforests, cycles through all four seasons. This means the animals, plants, and fungi living here have also adapted to those seasons. For plants, this means some are evergreen and some are deciduous. For animals, some might migrate or hibernate, or some stay active all year. In order for those animals to survive winter, however, they need proper shelter, just like you. Leaf litter on the forest floor provides excellent hiding places and insulation for things like ladybugs, amphibians, cocoons, and chrysalises. Dry, hollow plant stems are also great places to overwinter for things like mason bees, beetles, and wasps, all of which are beneficial insects you want to keep in the ecosystem, but that's a whole nother video. However, these insects are very picky about what size those branches need to be, and they must be strong enough to withstand our wet, cold winters. Introduced annual flowers that turn to mush in the winter are no good when it comes to shelter. A lot of home gardeners choose evergreen plants over deciduous plants because they stay green all year and you don't have to rake up all those pesky leaves. But without the leaves and the hollow stems, our native wildlife are missing the shelter they need to survive winter. Leaf litter is also excellent free mulch. It will protect your soil and fertilize as the leaves decompose, but that's a whole nother video. We've only just scratched the surface of how our urban ecosystems work, and things are already getting pretty complicated. The easiest thing that we can all do is just do what nature does. Grow native plants that belong here in the coastal temperate rainforest and ease up on that spring cleaning. Because if nature doesn't rake its leaves or deadhead its flowers, then neither should you. There's seeds in there. If you're trying to think of ways to regreen your city or just your own yard, keep these three things in mind. Living things need food, shelter, and water. Food and shelter we just talked about. Grow those native plants. More and more plant nurseries are starting to offer more or even exclusively native plants. Check out the Invasive Species Council of Metro Vancouver's website to find a native plant nursery near you. Or you can email us at Douglas College IUE to borrow native plant seeds from our seed library. I'll throw those links down in the video description below. Native plants also have the added benefit of being very low maintenance because they are perfectly adapted to the geographical conditions here where they have been growing and evolving for centuries. They're adapted to the temperature changes, they're adapted to the low light hours, and they're adapted to our soil, which usually means we don't have to add all that store-bought fertilizer. Excess fertilizer washes into our groundwater and storm drains, which empty into our urban streams. Many of our streams are also home to juvenile salmon, and the chemicals we spray in our gardens usually end up here, causing yet another trophic cascade. But that's another video.
Native plants also don't need a lot of extra watering because, you guessed it, they're adapted to the rainfall that occurs here naturally. Now, in a changing climate, water conservation should be priority number one in city planning, and native plants can help us conserve our freshwater resources while keeping our green spaces lush and full of life. Because of climate change, there is a lot of debate in city planning whether we should continue to grow native plants or introduce more drought-resistant plants. Now, from an ecological perspective, I still lean towards the side of conservation and encourage growing those native plants because, again, when we introduce a new species to our coastal temperate rainforest, it's really hard to predict how that species is going to affect the rest of the ecosystem or that food pyramid. Again, especially when it comes to things like plants that make up the base of all food chains in the ecosystem. And we don't want to accidentally overlook those symbiotic relationships, those really tight evolutionary bonds that our native plants and native animals have formed, whether again it's for food or shelter or other reasons. Science may not fully understand or may not have discovered all of these intricate, important, delicate relationships yet. And again, that's just another reason to be extra cautious when we're thinking about replacing native plants with exotic ones, because again, you just never really know what sort of ripple effect that's going to have. Now, with all that said, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, when growing native plants, they should be grown directly in the ground and not in containers if we don't want to keep watering them all the time. Their roots grow deep, and if we allow them, they can reach the water that's deeper under the ground, again helping us to conserve water. Number two, as cute as they might seem in stores, resist the urge to buy bird feeders and hummingbird feeders. You can think of most bird seed mixes and sugar water as being like junk food for the birds. Birds are smart and resourceful, and if you take them to a buffet, they're going to pick out their favorite foods, leading to an unhealthy, unbalanced diet. Bird feeders are also notorious hotspots for spreading bird disease. Birdhouses, bat houses, bird baths, and other water features are great alternatives to feeders. Mosquitoes won't breed in well-circulating water or shallow dishes that dry out every 3 to 5 days. So instead of feeding the birds, think about watering them instead. A little water goes a long way in today's climate. What can we as average city-dwelling citizens do to help? As one of the most influential animals in the coastal temperate rainforest and as part of the consumer class, our mouth is where our money is, or something like that. We have the power to influence large corporate and political scale change by voting, of course, and with this, our wallets. You may have heard the term consumer activism or ethical consumerism. Ethical consumerism is not only about human rights, but also environmental rights. Consumers like us can influence corporations by boycotting unethical products or choosing more sustainable ones. So in terms of urban habitat restoration, rewilding, or regreening, if we stop buying the things that are bad for our ecosystem, then the businesses will stop selling them, and the industry that supplies those items will start to lose money, and nobody likes losing money. So to stay alive, those industries will have to start supplying the things that we as consumers want to buy. So if we buy the native plants and stop buying chemical fertilizers and pesticides, we're essentially killing two birds with one stone, or helping two birds with one stone. You'll be influencing businesses to make more sustainable choices while also converting your own yard into a mini rainforest habitat. No matter how big or how small your yard is, every little bit helps. If you have a space outside where plants can grow, those plants are a part of our ecosystem and they can either be helpful or sometimes even harmful. Every park, every yard, every patio, every flower pot has the potential to bring back a little piece of the coastal temperate rainforest. And when we add all those little pieces together, they add up to make a large portion of land. So don't think what you do doesn't matter. It does. And all the living things, big or small, will thank you for helping to restore our natural ecosystem.
There's more that you can do to help restore the coastal temperate rainforest too. Number one, don't use chemical pesticides. Look for natural ways to reduce pests like companion planting or biological pest controls. Number two, don't use landscape fabric to suppress weeds. Many animals, including solitary bees, live in the soil, and landscape fabric blocks the entrance to their homes. Number three, wait until spring temperatures remain a steady 10 degrees Celsius overnight before you do your spring garden cleanup. Bee and butterfly larvae need time to complete their metamorphosis before we dig them up and throw away their winter shelters. Number four, try converting your lawn to more garden space or try one of West Coast Seed's lawn alternatives. Traditional grass lawns are an ecosystem wasteland. They provide no food, no shelter, and use a ton of water and fertilizer. I'll throw the link to West Coast Seeds in the video description down below along with those other resources. Number five, maybe the most important thing that we can do is don't just look at the scientific literature and advice from Western ideologies. Speak to and listen to the advice from our First Nations, the Katzie, Kwantlen, Coquitlam, Musqueam, Kakite, Squamish, Tawasin, Tsleil-Waututh, and all Coast Salish peoples have watched and observed this ecosystem for millennia. No one understands it better. Sometimes we don't need to understand the exact science behind why something works. We just need to accept that that is how nature works. Just watch and do what nature does. This is what the First Nations have been trying to teach us. One example is how salmon streams need trees. The First Nations have told cities, fisheries, and forestry leaders for ages that healthy salmon streams need lots of trees. But why? Salmon don't live in trees, they don't even eat trees. The simplest answer is because that is what Indigenous bands have observed in nature for thousands and thousands of years. But historically shown, that's not enough evidence to provoke change. Industry and government wants to know the why. So we spend time and we spend money waiting for researchers to discover why. Why do salmon streams need trees? Because the trees provide shade. Why is shade important? Because cool water has more dissolved oxygen and lower rates of fish disease. Tree roots also help stabilize stream banks and filter contaminants out of the groundwater. In addition, fallen leaves and branches provide hiding places from predators. Now, this type of research is important because it could help solve other problems or prevent future problems, but it also takes a lot of time and money. So I'm not saying don't do the research, just maybe rather than waiting for these important results, we can start sooner by listening to our Indigenous communities, and we can start planting and protecting the trees while the research is ongoing. In the end, restoring and rewilding our urban ecosystem isn't about perfection, it's about intention. Whether it's planting a few native species on a balcony or transforming an entire yard into a mini rainforest, every action makes a difference. The plants we choose, the way we clean up or don't clean up, and the voices we listen to all shape the future of our cities. Urban spaces don't have to be an ecological dead zone. They can be vibrant, living extensions of the coastal temperate rainforest. So let's shift the way we garden, the way we consume, and the way we think about our relationship with nature. Urban ecosystems aren't separate from the natural world, and we are not separate from the ecosystem. We are a big part of it, and that means we have the power and the responsibility to help it thrive. If you want to grow more native plants at home, we have a seed library to help you get started, where you can borrow all sorts of native plant seeds harvested from right here in our Coquitlam Soul Garden. Now, unlike buying a grown plant from the nursery, when you're starting native plants from seed, they actually need to be sown in the winter. So don't wait until spring to contact us. These seeds need to be sown from September to December at the very latest. And don't worry, if you have questions about that, we can help. Just email us at iue@douglascollege.ca. I'll also include a link to our website down below, where you can find more information about our seed library and other educational tools and resources. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking a little bit of time out of your day today to learn about ecosystem restoration and this beautiful ecosystem that we call home. Bye for now.